We are live.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise as you are able and join me in the welcoming of City Council and the playing of the national anthem, as well as reading of the invocation.
We come together today, we recognize the great responsibilities that are laid upon us. Our council will always strive to understand the needs of the people we serve and to use power wisely and well. Our purpose is to establish and maintain a city of righteousness where prosperity prevails and where justice rules. Let us also not forget those who've served our community and who are no longer with us and whose work we continue in their memory. Please be seated. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Councillor Wall.
Present.
Councillor Martin.
Here.
Councillor McCreary.
Here.
Councillor Utley.
Here.
Councillor Sicoli.
Here.
Councillor Sless.
Present.
Councillor Antosky.
Here.
Councillor Van Tilburg.
Present.
Councillor Carpenter.
Here.
And Mayor Davis.
Here. I should also mention that we have assisting us tonight, Tanya Daniels, who is a city clerk, and she is receiving assistance from a city clerk employee, Lisa Madden, who is behind us. I just want to briefly review the rules of procedure, remind members of council staff and our viewing public of the electronic participation policy for our virtual hybrid meetings. All staff and delegates are asked to please keep your video and microphones off until requested by the moderator or members of council. All rules for delegations under the city's procedural bylaw continue to apply. So we'll move into declarations of conflict of interest. I understand that there are several members of council, myself included, who are declaring a conflict on various agenda items. So I believe Councillor Sless, do you need to declare a conflict?
I do, Mr. Mayor. I believe it's to do with the ECEs. It would be in the social services report.
Correct. That's item 12.2.1, childcare and early years 10-year plan. And the nature of the conflict?
I have two daughters that are ECEs.
Great. Okay. Next, Councillor Sicoli. I think you have a conflict.
I will ask for your guidance on this. I do not have a conflict with the resolution as it's written, but I had conflict with the direction that the conversation was going in regards to doggy daycares for the animal control. So
you no longer have a conflict on.
I don't have a conflict with the resolution as it's written.
Okay. Councillor Wall.
I believe my conflict is in regards to the camera bylaw. Not sure which item that is.
Right, that's item 12.3.5.
Yeah, and my house is equipped with a surveillance system.
And that's the enactment of a bylaw to regulate and respect of fortification and protective elements. I also will declare a conflict in the same item for the same reason. So are there any other pecuniary interests anyone needs to declare regarding items on tonight's agenda? Please raise your hand. Seeing none. All right. So we'll now determine if there are any items that are to be separated tonight for discussion purposes. And I should tell you that we have several items that are being separated because of conflicts and delegations. 12.2.1, that's childcare in early years. The conflict declared by Councillor Sluss. 12.3.5, which is the enactment of bylaw to regulate and respect fortifications. Councillor Wallen, I have a conflict on that. We have 12.3.7, that's coyote sightings. There is a delegation on that this evening. Yeah. And 12.3.3, which is the regulation proposed amendments to the animal control bylaw. We do have a delegation this evening on that. Does anybody else wish any of the other items separated for discussion purposes? Yeah, Councillor Antosky.
Yes, please. 12.4.2, which is citizens committees, please.
Sorry, that's 12.4.2 appointments. Is that it, Councillor Antosky?
Yes.
Okay. No. Okay. There we go. Councillor McCreary.
Mayor, yes, thank you. 12.3.1.
Municipal election?
Correct.
Councillor Martin, sorry I missed you earlier.
Are we doing 13 yet, or is that coming later?
Well, those are automatically separated.
Okay, thank you.
So, anyone else? Nope, I think that takes care of it. So, Councillor Sicoli, would you please move the resolution to approve the items that have not been separated?
Of course, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Wall, that all items contained within the committee reports, items 12.1 to 12.4, not separated for discussion purposes, be approved.
All right, and before I call for the vote on that, Madam Clerk, would you please read the titles of the items that are included in this resolution?
Certainly. So from your Committee of the Whole Operations, 12.1.1, 2021 Film Annual Report, 12.1.2, 44 Elgin Street Tractor Trailer Access Improvements, 12.1.3, Balmoral Drive at Oxford Street All-Way Stop Control, 12.1.4, Fire Route on Private Property 206 to 216 Dunstan Street, 12.1.5, Park Road North Parking and Traffic Control to accommodate on-street parking, 12.1.6, Power Line Road Posted Speed Limit Reduction, 12.1.7, Standardization of Audible Push Buttons, 12.1.8, Museum Sustainability Plan Implementation Progress Update, 12.1.9, Letter of Agreement for 2021-2022 Dedicated Gas Tax Funds for Public Transportation Program for the Ministry of Transportation, 12.1.10, Healthy Kids Annual Update, 12.1.11, Time Limit Exemption Permit Parking Criteria, 12.1.12, Urban Road Cross Section for Winarden Court. From Social Services, you have item 12.2.2, update on community services and social development locations at the Cowan Community Health Hub. From Committee of the Whole Planning and Administration, 12.3.2, short-term accommodation parking requirements. 12.3.4, proposed amendments to Chapter 478 signs, outdoor and other advertising devices, additional information. 12.3.6 Building Construction Process Review Task Force, including development approvals process, staff review, and security release process. 12.3.8 Dissolve the OLT. 12.3.9 Police Station Task Force. From your Appointments Committee, 12.4.1 Representatives for FCM Cannabis Committee, and 12.4.3 Appointment of liaison members to various committees, boards, advisory committees, and task forces.
All right, if we could take the vote then, please.
Councillor Celeste, we're just waiting on your response.
I'm not getting the option to vote, but I vote in the affirmative.
I'll mark you. All items not separated for discussion purposes is carried on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those voting in favor, Councillor Sicoli, Utley, Celeste McCurry, Martin Carpenter, and Toski Van Tilbrook, while Mayor Davis.
All right, so there are no statutory public hearings or recognitions or achievement on the agenda for this evening, nor are there any proclamations. So we'll move then into presentations, delegations, and prior to doing that, I'd like to remind those present today that we do have some rules, which we always read. No person shall display any sign or barrier or placard in the meeting other than materials that, in the opinion of the chair, are legitimate audio-visual aids and necessary in connection with the presentation to be made to council. All persons present shall use polite and respectful language and shall refrain from the use of any language or the making of any gesture that is disrespectful or offensive. All persons addressing council shall speak only in the subject in debate and shall not speak on any other subject. No person shall applaud participants in debate or engage in conversation or behavior that may disrupt the proceedings of the meeting. And 15.6.2 requires no delegation shall be permitted to address the following matters: labor relations or employee negotiations. Litigation is either expected to proceed or that's currently proceeding or has already been decided by a trier of fact. Tenders, RFPs, or other procurement matters. Any other matters properly subject matter of the open meeting exceptions, the Municipal Act 2001 as amended. So we have two delegations this evening. Both are present. And we'll deal first with 9.1, which is Eden and Edward Post. I believe Ms. Post is here. And so I'd ask Eden Post if you would please come forward to the delegates table. If you please state your name and the item that you're speaking to. And then you have 10 minutes inclusive of questions for your presentation.
Hello, my name is Eden Post. I live at 24 Slater Street in Brantford, and I've been following the discussion of the proposed amendments to the animal control bylaw, and I have some concerns. My husband and I have been members of the Brant County Poultry Association since 2016, and we have enjoyed raising and keeping chickens in our backyard since then. The benefits for our family and neighborhood go beyond just the fact of having chickens in our yard. Our chickens are able to free range in their fenced-in run, which includes a compost area. This allows them to provide us with nutrient-dense compost for our vegetable gardens in our front and backyards. Because of their composting abilities, our family has not been contributing to food waste to the landfill. Our food scraps are all added to this compost, and chickens are excellent at aerating the compost pile, so odor is not a concern. We've developed a strong sense of community with our neighbors by sharing the wealth from our garden and the eggs from our chickens. We've been able to share the experience of caring for and raising chicks with our neighbors and their children. They've been extremely grateful and have shared that with us, to the point where in one case, a neighboring family decided to raise their own chicks so their family could receive the benefits of keeping poultry personally. Allowing the option to raise chicks is a wonderful experience for adults and children. It provides an opportunity for the household to research, prepare, and teach responsibility. Additional restrictions proposed of age and number of hens do not consider this or the realities of getting into poultry and keeping a small backyard flock. Many people have a distant relationship with where their food comes from. It's invaluable to our community to be able to experience and contribute to one of the simplest forms of food production. I participated in the online survey last month, but was disappointed that the proposed bylaw amendments don't appear to have considered the responses from the survey. For example, the highest limit for number of hens listed was just 6 per household. People may not be aware that 6 hens would not give a family a sufficient supply of eggs for their own family or to share with their neighbors. A higher limit, as preferred by the majority of survey respondents, or allowing people to use their own judgment of their poultry keeping ability, would be more appropriate. There is no merit in asking residents to seek permission from their neighbors to keep chickens. We have great neighbors, but we don't agree on everything. Seeking neighborhood permission seems like a recipe for resentment, especially if 1 out of 3 or 4 or 5 neighbors does not agree. There are many other things that do not require neighborhood permission, but would be equally or potentially even more disruptive to neighboring households. The possibilities of costly permits, inspections, and permission from neighbors seems overreaching. The existing zoning bylaw, municipal code, and property standards bylaw should be sufficient to govern the construction of coops and the maintenance of residential properties. The matter of cleanliness and pen location is already covered by the current bylaw. Regarding noise concerns, the sounds that hens make are brief, infrequent, and in the daytime. We've had many people who've been in our backyard, which isn't overly large, and not realized we had chickens. Registration of homes raising poultry is a good idea, and it's already covered in the existing bylaw without a fee. Proposed amendments seem burdensome, and some are redundant. When people have the knowledge required to safely keep poultry, they should be allowed to do so in a way that benefits their family and community and isn't cost prohibitive. We don't need more barriers for food accessibility. Overall, I support residential poultry keeping in the city of Brantford, and Brantford has the opportunity to create a bylaw that is tailored to the needs and interests of our city. I look forward to bylaw amendments that are helpful to the members of our community who wish to keep chickens and that reflect the values of our whole city.
So does any member have any questions for Ms. Post? Councillor McCurry. That's you.
Mayor, thank you. I didn't have a question, but I just wanted to say that that was an excellent presentation. You made some good points, and you helped to guide my vote on what's before us tonight.
Okay. Next, Councillor Martin.
Thank you. How many chickens do you keep in your yard?
Currently, we have 12.
Well, what's the average normally?
Of the average of which, sorry?
Well, right now you have 12. Have you been more than that?
We have had less, we have not had more.
Okay.
We started with 5 in 2016, and we've
And do you have any roosters?
no, we have in the past when we raised chicks, because that's a possibility. We didn't know what they were going to be, but we were able to find homes outside of the city because we just didn't want roosters personally in our yard. They don't lay eggs, so.
And how would you feel if one of your neighbors wanted to have pigs in their backyard?
Pigs? Was that your question?
Yes.
I think that would actually be interesting personally, but a backyard wouldn't be big enough logistically for a pig. They wouldn't be able to have the suitable habitat. Coming from someone who knows pig farmers, they require a lot more space, a lot more amenities than the average chicken.
Okay, thank you.
Next, Councillor Rutley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And I had a pet chicken as a child and lived for 12 years. And I
Wow.
won't go into it. I've got time. Could take a long time. But do the chickens, that are hens, incubate the eggs, or do you have a man-made incubator?
When we did have fertilized eggs to hatch for chicks, we just used our own hens to incubate. We have never gone into incubating our own eggs, and we don't have the rooster, so we don't have a continual supply of fertile eggs.
And lastly, what role do your children play in looking after the chicks and the chickens?
They are in charge of feeding and watering, and my 3-year-old particularly likes collecting the eggs. That's her
Okay.
favorite part.
Thank you very much. It's been very enlightening.
Thank you.
Councillor Sikoli.
Thank you. I love your presentation, and I want to thank you very much for coming out and educating all of us on the ins and outs of the poultry world. Councillor Martin took a lot of my questions, but I did have one. You had mentioned that 4 or 6 chickens just wouldn't be enough to sustain a family. How would you mind me asking how large your family is, or how many members are within the household?
Yes. So I don't know how many people know this, but I've learned since keeping chickens, the most productive hen you could get, like a real egg layer, might lay 300 eggs over the course of a year if they have supplemented lighting in the winter. So that's less than 1 a day. So if you have 6 hens, you're getting definitely less than 6 eggs a day. Right now, because the majority of our flock is old, we get between 1 and 3 eggs a day, and we have 12 chickens. But 2 of them are bantams. They're very small. They lay very small eggs and haven't laid in years because they're old. So they lay best for the first year of their life, and then even less in the second year of their life, and even less after that.
Okay.
So although we have 12 chickens, we don't get enough eggs for our family right now, as it is.
Do you have a large family, or
We have 4
4
people.
4 people?
So
Okay.
I guess it depends on how many
Okay.
eggs you eat, but we do eat eggs every day for breakfast. And if you want to bake or do anything else with them or give them to your neighbors.
That helps me put it in perspective.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for coming out.
Ms. Post, what's the life expectancy of most chickens?
That's a good question. So we have had our oldest in our current flock is 6 years old, because they're 2 of the originals that we've gotten. We have taken some to auction as well. So there's a small animal auction in Woodstock when we've had some older ones that we wanted to remove from our flock. So potentially some could live longer. The ones we have that live the longest are bantams. So just like with dogs, large breed dogs don't live as long as small breed dogs. Same idea with chickens. So we haven't had any exceed that age yet.
So I'll now go to, Councillor Wall.
Hi, thank you for being here and for your presentation. Okay, the way it was explained to me was that these regulations are to protect chickens, as crazy as that might sound. So not to like punish people for wanting to have chickens or to like regulate chickens, but like you seem like a really great person and that you and your family take care of these chickens. But I'm sure you can imagine that there might be people who don't, and they don't clean up after them, and their neighbors just don't really have any sort of recourse right now. Sorry, this is not your responsibility, but you can understand the circumstance that we're kind of in here.
Yep.
How would you suppose we regulate this? Like,
I would argue that a lot of it is already regulated by animal welfare, SPCA, and those kind of like bylaws that we already have about keeping your yard clean and general hygiene. Someone could choose to have less chickens. Someone could definitely say, oh, I'm a single person, I want 2 chickens. How fun is that? But someone who's a family of 6 might say, well, 2 chickens isn't going to do anything for our family necessarily. Plus, like if we're getting into cleaning up after them, for smell, we bed our coop with wood shavings, and the wood shavings and chicken manure together, they have an ideal carbon and nitrogen ratio, which helps them break down and turn into well-managed compost with very little smell. So it's not that we have to like get rid of manure from our yard. We compost it and spread it on our garden. In the fall, we put the leaves from our yard and our neighbors' yards into our composter, and they peck through that and eat stuff and kick it up and turn it into compost. So as far as, it's not just like they're sitting in a pile of manure all the time. If they are kept properly, just like any animal, they're going to not be smelly and not be dirty.
Is this at an,
Sorry. Counselor, well, we've gone about 12 minutes, so we've actually gone a little bit beyond the 10 minutes.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, Post, for the presentation. It was very informative and you were very succinct and clearly got your message and information across. And we'll be debating this very early in the meeting as we move up the items that we've had delegations on. So
Okay.
hopefully within the next half hour.
Thank you. And you're all welcome to come meet our chickens anytime.
Yeah. So we have one other delegation. Bill LaSalle wants to speak to us regarding item 12.3.7, and that is the coyote resolution. So Mr. LaSalle, if you please come forward, identify yourself, confirm you're here to speak about the coyotes, and then you'll have 10 minutes to make your presentation, inclusive of questions from council.
Okay. Yes, I'm Bill LaSalle. I'm here to speak on the coyote issue. Brantford needs a comprehensive wildlife management plan. The city needs to realize that coexistence is a more reasonable goal rather than fear, disdain, and slaughter. Coyotes are just the most recent victim of misunderstanding and contempt. The city is asking people to report whether or not they think a deer was killed by a coyote. I've come across many people stating there is a deer the coyotes have killed, but upon further examination, there's obvious wounds from poachers. There is also a request for people to report sightings. It is unfathomable to think that anyone could agree that this is an accurate or reasonable means to collect data. There will be multiple sightings of the same animal over and over. You could have a count of a dozen or so when the actual count may be only 2 or 3. Council has also asked people to put lids on their garbage cans. However, there are large open garbage cans throughout the city in our parks and our trailheads. Permits in our parks create bags and bags of garbage, which is not picked up until a day or 2 later. This also needs attention. To make a decision on the fate of our animal friends without any reliable or responsible fact-finding mission is incomprehensible. The measures often contemplated are only short-term solutions which will not be successful. A longer-term solution, such as a wildlife management plan, is what is necessary for any adequate solution. People blame the deer deaths on coyotes, which is definitely not the case, as most are bodies left there by illegal hunters who are shooting both adult deer, fawns, and other wildlife throughout the trail system of Brantford. I have pictures available of obvious trauma caused by poachers, such as bullet holes and butchering. Some deer have been taken by coyotes, but this is not usually the case in Brantford's trail system or in our parks. There is also a serious carcass mishandling issue in dealing with the dead deer bodies. Parks employees just toss the remains into the bush rather than properly disposing of them. These carcasses are an invitation to lunch for the coyotes. A proper management plan would never condone this type of mishandling. A couple of points of misinformation about these animals include they were stalking me. This is highly unlikely. Coyotes do not stalk larger animals. They may have been heading in the same direction as you, but they are not stalking you. Also, they are curious about their territory and maybe just trying to figure out what you're doing there. Coyotes are dangerous. Well, you're very, very hard pressed to find an incident where a man was not directly involved through feeding or other disrespect. Coyotes are a very timid animal and want nothing to do with humans. Coyotes are a pack animal. A pack is mostly a small family unit. Each pack has its own territory that it feeds in. Only the alpha coyotes mate. However, if the alpha female dies or is killed, every other female will mate and give birth to a litter, which will dramatically increase in numbers and in turn dramatically increase the possibilities of conflict. A coyote pack has a complex structure that needs to be kept intact to keep conflict to a minimum. With abrupt changes to their habitats, allowing organizations to destroy nature as they see fit without any care or concern of how their actions are affecting not only the wild, but the people who enjoy their leisure in nature, there's going to be more and more conflict in our natural areas as well as in our neighborhoods. In my travels, I have ended up in close contact with several species, including coyotes, in daylight hours as well as in darkness. I have never had an issue, including when I have had my small dog with me. People need to understand that we can coexist with other species. Education and the respect for our surroundings can substantially reduce or eliminate the conflict issues. Prevention and enforcement is a necessary tool through adequate bylaws, including in the feeding of wildlife, either purposely or through neglect of property. There are many available resources that this city should be examining other than the very unscientific and sketchy research. Issues need to be properly addressed rather than dealing with things in a knee-jerk reaction. We have a moral and ethical responsibility to respect our surroundings and the inhabitants of those surroundings, not only for our own health and enjoyment, but for that of our future as well. Thank you.
So we'll now move into questions for Mr. LaSalle, and we have in the council chamber, Councilor McCurry.
Bill, I want to thank you for coming today. For those who may not know, Bill's one of the most knowledgeable folks in our community with respect to wildlife and wildlife management. Your input is most valued today, and thank you again. The coyote poses no danger to human beings, correct? In terms
Unless
of predatory behavior?
Unless people start feeding them, and then they lose their fear of humans, and that's when the conflict issues begin. If there's too much feeding, like especially in our natural areas, in my opinion, there should be nothing but bird seed, nuts, and berries put down, but people are feeding the deer and coyotes, and it's just sometimes it gets out of hand.
And even an adult deer is pretty tough prey for one or two coyotes, right?
If they get caught up in the bush, I've seen videos of two wolves taking down a moose. So.
Yeah. Okay,
So
thanks again, Bill.
It does happen, but it's most often smaller prey, like
Yeah.
rabbits and smaller prey like that.
Yeah, and I can attest to the evidence you've given about the predators on our trails. Councillor Martin and I have seen folks hunting on the trails with bow and arrows all over south of town. And we've also seen evidence of animals that have been killed illegally by people in the city of Brantford. So again, thanks, Bill, and thanks for your stewardship as well.
Thank you.
Next, Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bill, I'd like to thank you as well it's been a while since we've seen each other.
Yeah.
Would it be possible for us to get a copy of the presentation that you've just read out?
Yes, certainly. Yeah.
Thank you very much. If you wouldn't mind providing a copy to the clerk, she can distribute that to us and others. And that could form part of a report that we're looking for in 3 months. Much of what you said is exactly correct. What would you offer in terms of advice to track coyotes in the city? Because you're right, the same one may be seen 15 times by people.
Well, I couldn't tell you how to track them. Like you'd have to get some people that track scat and carcasses and things like that. But same as coyote vocalization, you can't determine how many there is by the howling you hear. Yet some people would think there's a dozen when there's only two. It is called the Bogest effect, when only two coyotes sound like a dozen. That's.
Bill, would you support if we approach the MNR and ask them to tag one or two animals so we can track them across the city just to see what their range is within the city?
Yeah, that would be reasonable.
Yeah.
If the MNR would go that route.
Yeah.
Like Coyote has up to about a 24 square kilometer territory.
Oh.
If that's what they need and to feed. Like if there is suitable feeding, like it'll be a lot smaller than that, but.
Thank you very much, Bill. And lastly, can we call on you to, if we have questions, use you as a sounding board for some actions and questions?
Yes, anytime in
Okay.
any situation regarding the wildlife
Okay,
or the natural
Thank-
areas.
thanks, Bill. Wouldn't have expected anything less, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we'll now go to the Zoom participants. Councillor Van Tilburg.
Hello, Bill. Thank you very much for that presentation. Most of the other councilors did cover questions that I would have for you. Your comments regarding what we may be doing wrong, it seems like that's going to be addressed, but what about what is in here that's doing right? You would support the public awareness campaign and things that would provide tips for residents on how to respond with potential close contact. In other words, don't be feeding them a proper education program for citizens.
Yes, like signage like do not feed, do not approach, do not harass in our natural areas where there's known to be coyotes, and that would that's it just needs to be education, and people are afraid for no reason.
Thank you. Afraid for no reason. And I just want to confirm your point, because I used to live on Hardy Road, and you're absolutely right. Hunters would take down a deer, maybe not even get it, and the coyotes might find something later if that were the case. But what you expressed is more of what I saw as well. And I just wanted to shore up that comment that you made. Thank you very much for coming forward. I think it is well established. You're probably one of the most knowledgeable people in the area. So thanks again. And I assume we'll look forward to hearing back from you in 3 months when this report comes back to us.
Thank you.
All right, so we've gone just slightly beyond 10 minutes. So I want to thank you very much, Ms. LaSalle, for coming out tonight and providing us with the benefit of your information and the wisdom you have regarding not only coyotes, but wildlife generally in our community.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we'll now move into communications. And I understand that Councillor McCreary, you have the motion on communications. Would you please read it and state your seconder?
Mayor, thank you. Yes, you're correct. As always, Mayor. My seconder is Councillor Martin, and it's the Clerk's Report on Communications 2022-186, Tuesday, February 22. As I said, I move, Councillor Martin seconds, that the Clerk's Report on Communications for Feb 22 be received.
All right, any discussion? Seeing none. Madam Clerk, would you please take the vote on this?
Mayor Davis, just for this.
Yeah.
Clerk's report on communication has carried on a recorded vote of 9-0. Those voting in favor, Councillors Secoli, Utley, Schlesper, Curry, Martin, Carpenter, and Toski, Van Tilburg, Mayor Davis. Councillor Wall was not present at the time of the vote.
All right, we'll now move to section 11, which is minutes. I believe, Councillor Utley, you have that motion. Would you please read it and state your seconder?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If that could be brought up, there it is. Moved by myself and seconded by my ward mate, Councillor John Sless, that the following minutes be adopted. City Council, December 21, 21. Special City Council, December 21, 21. 11.3, Special City Council, January 20. Special City Council, January 25. Special City Council, February the 2nd. Special City Council, February the 7th. Special City Council, February the 8th. Special City Council, Private and Confidential, January 20. Special City Council, Private and Confidential, January 25. Special City Council, Private and Confidential, February the 2nd. Special City Council, Private and Confidential, February the 8th, and they were all 2022, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Great. So are there any errors and omissions? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please take the vote?
All minutes have carried on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those voting in favor, Councillor Secoli, Utley, Celeste, McCurry, Martin, Carpenter, Antosky, Van Tilburg, Wall, Mayor Davis.
Thank you. So we'll now deal with the committee reports that were separated for discussion purposes. Councillor Van Tilburg, would you please move the motion to place all separated items from the committee reports not previously voted on to have that on the floor?
Moved by myself, seconded by my ward weight, Councillor Wall, that all items in the committee reports, items 12.1 to 12.4, separated for discussion, be approved.
Thank you. So following our rules of procedure, we'll deal with the items first where we had delegations this evening. That means we'll deal with item 12.3.3 first. That, of course, is the animal control bylaw or amendments to the animal control bylaw. So, speakers. Councillor Antosky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I think we had a very good presentation this evening. And, you know, this already exists in our city. This is just a way to regulate the few problems that we've had. Since I think it's 2012, which is when the last revision or anything was made to this bylaw, we've had a total of 48 complaints since 2012. And in 2021, there was a total of 10. I don't know yet how many of those were repeat. You know, maybe there's one or two people in there that are having struggles taking care of them correctly. And this allows us to take care of those and doesn't put everybody offside that has chickens. So you know, I hope we don't refer this, keep this as a referred item. I think this has been a long time waiting. I think most people are responsible animal keepers, and the ones that aren't, we then deal with because now we have something that allows us to do so. So I hope we can take this off the table as a referred item and vote on it and pass this tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Utley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can't support this as it's written. I don't recall ever getting a complaint about chickens, but I get quite a few calls about cats that defecate and urinate on their neighbors' properties. And I see that as a much bigger problem than somebody keeping chickens. There may be the odd a resident that isn't as responsible as the presentation that was made to us tonight. And, you know, there's just takes that one or two people that make it difficult for their neighbors that causes a bigger problem for others that are responsible in keeping their animals safe and healthy. So I just wanted to add that, Mr. Mayor, and thank you.
Other speakers in the council chamber, Councillor Secoli.
Thank you. I've been thinking a lot about this because I did do my own little poll on social media where the chickens are concerned, and there was a ton of support for them in our community. The way this is written, referring it back to staff, I really take issue with putting the burden of governance onto the shoulders of our residents and going door to door and asking neighbors for permission to rightfully enjoy their property and their right to raise chickens. I believe our job is to put the systems in place that regulate and enforce, whether through bylaw or animal welfare. That way we can keep an eye on, you know, the bad seeds out there. But, you know, I don't think our job is to micromanage, like I said, the right of enjoyment of our community members to raise chickens and teach their children all these wonderful things about life cycles. So I don't think I can support this being referred back to staff. And I would love the opportunity to vote on it tonight and give our residents and our chicken lovers some peace of mind. Thanks.
Councillor McCurry.
Mayor, thank you very much. I'm of a mind to move forward with this tonight as well. I do have some trepidation with respect to chicken keepers being as responsible as the lady that appeared before us tonight. And as Councillor Utley said, we certainly do have a lot of annoyances in the community that come as a result of folks who don't recognize their responsibility to their neighbors and to the community at large. We may find in the fullness of time that this adds one more into that matrix. But quite frankly, I haven't heard from a lot of people for or against, but I do know that Councillor Antosky has, and Councillor Scully says she has, and the community seems to favor this. So I'm quite happy to support that tonight.
Councillor Wall.
I love the way this conversation's going. I can't support this either, and I wasn't looking forward to having to support this either. But I touched upon it when the delegate spoke, and I'm so thankful to hear of all of the things that the delegate has done to take care of these chickens. But I just really want to put a PSA out there. If you live next door to somebody or in the neighborhood with somebody who has any type of animal and they're not being treated appropriately and they don't have a good quality of life, and you believe that that dog or that cat or that bird or that snake or that chicken or that rooster is not safe, please report it. Pick up the phone and call, because that's my biggest concern. Every single time I've gotten a call from a constituent about an animal, a dog, a cat, a bird, a snake, a hamster, a gerbil, a chicken, it's because the animal's being neglected and its living conditions are being neglected. And that's a honest concern. It's the only reason I'd support any sort of bylaw or any sort of legislation regulating animals in our city, because whether you're an animal or a human, you deserve a decent quality of life. And I mean, personally, I'm not a big fan of chicken keeping or keeping any animal in a cage, but that's my personal opinions. If people want to do that, that's up to them. And it's been done, practiced forever. I just want there to be onus and responsibility on animal owners to provide a decent quality of life for those animals. And if you see something and you're concerned, or anyway, so that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
All right, we'll go to the Zoom participants now. Councillor Sluss, you're first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, it was an excellent presentation this evening, and I was glad that it came. I had a resident call me, and I told her that she should come and present. And she said, well, her sister would be coming, but I didn't realize her sister was an expert. So I'm really glad the sister came, because I think we heard an excellent professional, I think, opinion on this whole issue. So thank you, Ed, for coming. Having said that, I would rather deal with this tonight as well. And I guess I would ask you, Mr. Mayor, what do you need on the floor to bring this up for debate this evening and get rid of the referral?
Well, I've been waiting for somebody to ask me. What you need to do is, you'll recall at Committee of the Whole, we had a report that said be received and then directed staff to present a bylaw, which would be in the next cycle, likely. But anyway, so that was sort of trumped by an amendment that referred it back to staff for further information regarding requiring permission from neighboring properties to qualify for a license to keep chickens. And I think what I need, if the sentiment is that we proceed to accept the report as was presented to us, we not refer it for this purpose, I need an amendment to delete that. It's in essence a preamble. So I need a mover and a seconder.
I'll move that then, Mr. Mayor, seeking a seconder.
All right, so it's moved by Councillor Sluss, and that would be deleting the preamble in the report. So in essence, it would not be referred. Anything, and Councillor Utley, you're going to second that? Madam Clerk, did you? We have the paperwork on that? Yeah, but the preamble would be struck. The deferral would be struck. The referral. Yeah. All right. So speaking to the amendment, Councillor Carpenter.
Yes, wasn't there an amendment by Councillor McCurry at Committee of the Whole to that was the amendment to ask the neighbors for permission? Does that amendment have to come out as well?
Well, that's the amendment that we're deleting. We're striking. This amendment is to strike that referral.
Okay, so then we would just be dealing with the motion as written by staff to come back with suggestions. So we could change the number of chickens at that time or make any amendment to that when it comes back as a bylaw.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because the bylaw will have all of those specific provisions in it. We can adjust it and amend it then.
Yeah, I just wanted the public to be clear about what we were doing here tonight, and also to the public, the reason that those of us are on Zoom, we speak last after all members that are sitting in the council chamber speak first. It's not that we don't care, and we can't get in the order because we run out of time. Thank you.
That's right. I'm not picking on you. I'm just following the procedure that we agreed to. So Councillor Van Tilburg.
Well, that's good. I'm glad Councillor Carpenter tried to explain it clearly for people watching. I just would like that clarified again for me who is voting on this to fully understand. So what will we be voting on right now is something that will strike down the amendment of the referral. Is that correct?
You're absolutely correct.
And then,
yeah,
and then there is, when we pass it, is not a done deal because it won't be fixed in stone on what number of chickens it is at as of today if we pass this. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, because the resolution we had coming to us from staff said that staff would present a bylaw to us sometime in the future that would have all the detailed regulations in it and a permitting process and also amending the definition of kennel. And so that was the staff recommendation that came to us, which you're right. The detail will come to us in the bylaw. And what happened at Committee of the Whole was there was a motion to refer it for further consideration by staff, and the amendment on the floor is to strike the referral.
Very, very good. Just if you could remind us all before we go to do that vote so that it's very clear what our yes means and what our no means, because we do get confused. Right. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, just to be clear, if you're voting yes tonight, you're voting yes to this amendment to striking the referral. So we deal with it tonight. So it can go to staff and staff can then prepare the necessary bylaw to be brought back to us later this winter or spring. So any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please take the vote on the amendment to strike the referral?
The amendment to strike the referral as a part of the COW report, putting the main motion back on the floor that was proposed by staff has carried on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those voting in favor, Councillors Sicoli, Utley, Sless, McCreary, Martin, Carpenter, Antosky, Van Tilburg, Wall, Mayor Davis.
All right, then to the amended resolution. Any further speakers? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please take the vote on the resolution that's now not going to be referred?
Councillor Martin, Councillor Carpenter is waiting for your response.
Are we voting up on the bylaw now, on the resolution now, without any opportunity to speak?
Well, I did ask if anybody wanted to speak. I didn't see any raised hands. I'd say this, it's going to come back to us with the detailed regulations in it, and I'm sure we'll have a robust discussion at that time. Yeah, so Madam Clerk, who are you missing on the vote?
No one now.
Okay. What's the result of the vote?
Item 12.3.3 is carried on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those voting in favor, Councillor Sicoli, Utley, Sless, McCreary, Martin, Carpenter, and Antosky, Van Tilburg, Wall, Mayor Davis.
All right, so let's move to the next item, which is the coyote. Yes, 12.3.7. That is the resolution regarding coyote sightings. And of course, we had Mr. LaSalle speak to that, so we're moving that up. Speakers in the council chamber, Councillor McCreary.
Mayor, thank you. Staff have done a good job on this. And tonight we've had what I would consider a local expert on the matter speak to us. So Mayor, I have an amendment I would like to introduce, and with your leave, I'll do it at your pleasure at whatever time you wish.
Well, thanks for giving us head ups on that. I think I'd like to go to a couple of the speakers and then we'll come back to you for that amendment. So Councillor Utley, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to emphasize that we're looking for information and data at this time. We're not looking at culling coyotes in the community. We've received, I don't know how many around council have received comments, phone calls, emails from neighbors. Certainly I have in the Mayfair area where coyotes are seen. And look, rightly so, those that don't understand coyote behavior, suddenly get scared that they're animals, small animals, or their children might be harmed. And there's probably rare cases of that, I would think. But I'm just, that's my guess. I want to emphasize that. And so I think we want to build this picture, a map across the city, how widespread are coyotes, where are they being seen? Are they congregating in certain areas? As Mr. LaSalle has said, they have I think 25 square kilometer range that they have and protect. So let's build that picture first, get some data, get some facts, get the MNR involved in tagging coyotes to see where they are in the community and how far they roam. And then that can go back for a more fulsome debate later on in the spring or summer. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
In the council chamber, we have Councillor Martin, you're next.
Thank you. I'd just like to reiterate one of the things the presentation stressed was that not to feed the coyotes. And I stress that because it's true for all wildlife. I had a coworker one time who was feeding squirrels, and then a week later, after I told him he shouldn't, he came complaining they were in his attic. I said, well, what did you expect? You invited them. So, I mean, it's a matter of, don't feed the coyotes, don't feed the squirrels, don't feed any of the wildlife. We don't want them to become dependent on humans. We don't want them to become acclimatized to humans. They're called wild animals for a reason. They're meant to live in the wild. They look after themselves. And when we feed them, we interfere with their ability to find food on their own. And if we stop feeding them, now they're in trouble and now they come looking for that food. And that's not what we want. We want them to stay in their area, hopefully without us interfering with their habitat. But that's always going to happen to some extent. But I stress again, please don't feed any wild animals, including feral cats.
Councillor Antosky, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate some of the comments by my colleagues just now. It provides some clarification. I think it's good to get some information back. I love the education piece of this. I'll reiterate what I said when we first discussed this, that sightings don't equal danger, and I think that we have to make that clear. And so from that's where I have a bit of a concern with having citizens as part of the tracking mechanism, because for those of us who aren't that educated on it, it may just raise more of a concern, more fear, without all those education pieces behind it. I'm completely supportive of MNR being involved in that, who have trained individuals and have the right tools to do that. So I'll look forward to the report. I'm a bit cautious about how we involve citizens with this in terms of getting the data that we really need. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Councillor McCreary, time's right for your amendment.
Mayor, thank you. My amendment is as follows, that council thank Mr. LaSalle for his expert presentation, and the staff be directed to review Mr. LaSalle's recommendations and to incorporate where applicable into the city's coyote plan. Seconded by my ward mate, Councillor Martin.
Is that correct, Councillor Martin? All right. Just make sure our clerk has that. Good. Okay. Yeah, the clerk has pointed out to me, Councilor McCurry, that this resolution 12.3.7, it doesn't have a report back. It directs staff to develop the system of tracking. It also directs staff contact in the Ministry of Natural Resources through tagging and then develop a public awareness tool. So then you have to just change the wording slightly.
Can we see the wording? It's
Gonna-
dictated.
We'll get the original up so you can see what I'm talking about. Madam Clerk, will you please put the original resolution up, 12.3.7? Seconds. Okay. Oh, there we are. So you see the problem, Councilor Curry, you don't have a report coming back to us. So you're going to have to reword your amendment.
Yeah, I had asked to see what I had dictated.
All right. No, this is good, Madam Clerk. We can see what we're dealing with, so we'll move. There you go. It's out of order in the sense you talk about the city's coyote plan, like we don't, the original resolution didn't call for that.
Mayor, I'd be most receptive to your angels on the pin suggestions.
Yeah. Maybe we can add that to D. I mean, there is a memo coming back to us outlining the findings of the data collection. So why don't we, if you can put that back up, Madam Clerk, the amendment. Why don't we change that? I suggest you change that, Councilor McCreary. Whoops, where'd it go? Madam Clerk, can you give it? Yes, Councilor Martin, do you have a suggestion? As a
Thank
seconder?
you. What I would suggest is that this amendment be changed slightly. The presentation suggested that we need a wildlife plan. And I would suggest that instead of having this referred to informing the city's coyote plan, the staff be directed to come back with a proper wildlife plan for the city of Brantford.
So you'd want it to read, council thank Mr. LaSalle and that staff be directed to review the comments from the delegation and to bring back to committee of the whole for consideration a wildlife management plan.
Yes, that's my suggestion.
And do you have in mind when that would come back?
Well, I don't think there's any hurry for that. They can have 2 or 3 cycles, whatever they feel is appropriate.
Okay.
I think
So as the mover, Councilor McCreary, do you accept your seconder suggestion?
Very kind of you to ask, Mayor. Thank you very much. Yes, in fact, I think that's appropriate. And I would ask Jim Hahn what an appropriate comeback date would be.
Yes, I actually think the wildlife management plan is responsibility of the MNR, not really staff for how we manage the wildlife. But we can definitely look into that and bring that back in terms of the tier of government that is responsible for that, provide that information.
All right, Madam Clerk, if we could please have that just.
We really gotta have control of our own mics. Okay.
Let's deal with your amendment. Madam Clerk, if you please get this, I realize you're typing on the fly here.
Mayor, I don't know why my mic was turned off. I was having a conversation with Indy. Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't finished.
Do you have any other comments, discussion regarding your amendment?
Would my prior comment not have led you to believe that that's in the affirmative?
Well, then go right ahead.
Mr.
You still
Hahn,
have 2 minutes left.
Mr. Hahn, my comment was, what would be the date for that to come back to us, given your work plan?
Through you, Mayor Davis, we could bring that back in 2 cycles.
End of April?
March, end of April. Yeah, for the May cow.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And we'll attach that date to the amendment.
So any further discussion on the amendment? Saying, oh, Councillor Wall, then Councillor Ellie.
Thanks, Mayor Davis. And might I add, you're doing a great job.
Under the
Okay.
most trying of circumstances, yes.
I can only imagine. Hey, we're all getting back into the swing of things. I just want to point out how incredible it is that we had 2 amazing delegations this evening. And because of those delegations, we have made significant changes to the way that this city is governed. And I am just unbelievably impressed with that. And I hope that next meeting, we've got 10 delegations, because there are 3 people sitting in a gallery that could easily seat, I don't know, 100 people. Honestly, delegations, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much for coming. This is amazing. That's it.
Councillor Utley, you're next on the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I just want to talk about the 2 cycles. We're asking for, the public and the MNR to get back to us in 3 months, which is 3 cycles. And I wonder if they could be tied together. And I hope that's accepted as a friendly to the mover of the amendment.
Councillor McCurry, you have a request. You're giving us a thumbs up. Councillor Martin, it's a thumbs up. It's a friendly amendment. Any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please take the vote on the amendment?
Councillor Wallace, waiting on your response.
Yes.
Thumbs up? Yep, I'll mark you. Thank you. Item 12.3.7 amendment has carried on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those voting in favor, Councillor Secoli, Utley, Sless, McCreary, Martin, Carpenter, and Toski, Van Tilburg, Wall, Mayor Davis.
Any discussion on the resolution as amended? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the vote on the amended resolution.
Councillor Wong. Thank you. Item 12.3.7 as amended carried on a recorded vote of 9-1. Those voting in favor, Councillors Secoli, Utley, Sless, McCurry, Martin, and Toski, Van Tilburg, Wall, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillor Carpenter.
All right, we'll now deal with item 12.2.1, the Child Care and Early Years 10-year financial plan. This was separated because of Councillor Sless's conflict. Any discussion? Seeing no raised hands, Madam Clerk, would you please take the vote?
Councillor Wall. Mayor Davis. Thank you. Item 12.2.1 Child Care and Early Years 10-year plan 2022 to 2032 carried on a recorded vote of 9-0. Those voting in favor, Councillors Sikoli, Utley, McCrory, Martin, Carpenter, and Toski, Vento, Burgwall, Mayor Davis, noting Councillor Slack's conflict.
We'll now move to the fourth item, which is 12.3.1, the municipal election planning legislation update. Councillor McCurry, you asked for this to be separated.
Mayor, thank you. Yes, that's correct. This is the report that we received, and it's kind of the first glimpse the community has about the municipal election that will be occurring this fall in the year 2022. You know, in the city of Brantford, we've taken a lot of heat with respect to the democratic process, and I think it's important that the community, beginning tonight, understand the electoral process that occurs this year and what some of the key dates are. I would hope that there are quite a number of folks in the community, particularly those that have expressed an interest in municipal matters, you know, including folks that come to our delegations quite regularly. I might ask Mayor if staff could just briefly give us a bit of a glimpse into what some of the key dates are surrounding the 2022 election process.
Probably the person best positioned to do that is our city clerk.
Thank you through Mayor Davis to the councillor and the public. So some key dates that I would highlight, first being May 2nd, which is the entrance of the nomination period opening. That commences and is holding until August 19th at 2 p.m. where the nomination period closes. After that, we have the certification of candidates, which would happen on August 22nd. And then proceeding into our October timeline, key dates would be where the voting take place for constituents and electors and candidates. That commences in our current plan on October the 3rd, with the online voting being the first method to open. Then we have some advanced polls being planned for October 12th to the 15th, culminating on October 21st being the final voting day, where the results would be public at that point.
Thank you for that, Tanya. And with respect to electors in the city of Brantford, could you say in general who may vote in the election?
Certainly through the mayor to the councillor. So that would be an individual that is 18 years or older, has either a residence or property relationship with the city of Brantford, and is a Canadian citizen.
Not restricted to folks that own land, correct?
No, the requirement is that they have a relationship with a property. It could be a tenant relationship. It's not ownership.
And it could be somebody that lives in another municipality but owns property here?
Through the chair, yes, that does happen where you have property ownership in the municipality where the individual would have a right to vote. Here, they would be a non-school board elector voter.
And Tanya, what's your expectation of the production of the initial preliminary voters list, the date for that?
Through the mayor to the councillor, that's a very good question. I think that's I have a lot of dates in my head, and when we actually have the voters list delivered from MPAC is not one of them that comes straight to mind. I can tell you that the voterlookup.ca is live right now, so individuals can go and look and see if they're on the voters list and have their information amended. But generally, it is early summer where we would have the first version of the voters list produced to us from MPAC, which then electors could amend their voter registration with us directly.
And folks who are eligible to vote but aren't on that list can get on that list. Is that correct?
Certainly through the mayor to the councillor, voterlookup.ca is something I would promote right now. You see that promoted on our city website and any email you may receive from some of our city staff members. Again, voterlookup.ca is how to do that process right now. We do have a relationship with the public library where their assisting members use that process as well. And then the adding of the voters list would commence July 31st.
And your staff will soon be busy as the Dickens with election materials, and that will go until voting day, which is
through the mayor to the councillor. We are busy as the Dickens now, getting all the preparations together, and we certainly are busy right up until October 24th, which is voting day, which closes at 8 p.m. that evening.
And your work doesn't end on that date, does it?
Through the mayor to the councillor, no, it doesn't. Then the certification of results happens as soon as they're possible afterwards. Generally, that is the next day. And then we have work with the candidates in their financial requirements that are required, and then the onboarding of our new council term. The term commences November 15th.
Folks who did not file from the last election are ineligible to run, is that correct?
Again, through the mayor to the councillor, there is restrictions on whether you can be a candidate based on if you didn't complete your financials in 2018 or you were convicted of another election offense.
Thank you very much for that. And thanks for all the work that goes into this, Tonya.
Councillor Van Tilburg.
If I recall correctly, the last election was our first with online voting. And I think that was one heck of an asset. I don't see as much uptake as I thought I might, but I'm optimistic that it's going to be significantly more this time. But people have asked, how do we, because I don't remember now, how do we verify people's identification? Like when you vote physically, you have to show a bunch of ID before you can vote. When you're doing electronically, how does a person demonstrate their identification so that we know they are who they are and that they haven't got 3 or 4 mailings and stuff like that? Because I don't want those questions to come up.
Certainly through to the councillor. Just one correction I would make is that this would actually be our 3rd election with online voting.
Even better.
We commenced it back in 2014, initially with our advanced period. And then in 2018, we expanded that to include up to and including election day. And there was, again, there's an uptake on the online. We potentially could see that even more prevalent now with the coming out of the pandemic, that individuals may want to exercise their right in an alternative fashion. As far as authenticating the elector, we have a 2-step process that requires the authentication, and it uses data that MPAC has to compare who the elector is and their private information before the ballot would be released to them. It also talks with or communicates with our live voters list that is occurring at the polls. So it isn't possible to vote online and then step into a poll and then want to vote again because you've already been stricken off of the voters list.
And how would we stop somebody, say, from voting for their sister or their brother?
Through the chair, there would, you mean on behalf?
If they are the same residence,
voting on their behalf.
Yeah. Yes.
Again, so this is a participatory event where the owner is ownership on the elector and the person casting the ballot not to commit fraud.
Thank you. And we are having more time. There's more going to be more online voting this year than the past. Like I think there's a lot more. Is that not correct?
I'm sorry, about online voting?
Yes, a lot more online voting dates this election.
Through the mayor to the councillor, it's very comparative in our current plan. So there's 21 days of active voting, which commences with online. And I believe if memory serves in 18, there might have been 20. So we might be just advanced just slightly a day or so. Very close though, very close.
I'm learning. Thank you very much.
Councillor Carpenter, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe to the clerk. The question of ranked balloting, it's past the time when council looks at that or decides on that or makes any changes. Is that correct?
Through the mayor to the councillor, the province actually removed the eligibility for ranked balloting from the election in its entirety.
Okay. And putting the question on the ballot, what was the timeline for that?
Through the mayor to the councillor, I believe that is a March 1st deadline. So that too has come.
Yeah. And council wasn't, we weren't apprised of that deadline looming and any options, any questions from members of council to put that on anything on the ballot, right?
Through the mayor to the councillor, sorry?
Was that brought to our attention?
Certainly the dates are publicized, but we don't produce a report identifying and questioning whether council would want to produce a question on the ballot.
Yeah, we don't get advance warning saying if we want to do that, we better think about it because it's March 1st. Okay, that's fine. Another question I have is experiences at elections throughout the years where people that rent, for example, are prohibited from putting an election sign on the front lawn because the landlord doesn't like the candidate or vice versa and says, you can't do that. Or a landlord, for example, who doesn't live in the building, puts a sign on the lawn while he or she doesn't live there and the tenant isn't a supporter of that candidate. How can we rectify those kinds of situations where people's sort of rights to demonstrate who they support?
Through the mayor to the councillor. So what I would say in some of those aspects, so we're not getting too much into the landlord and elector relationship. There is both a sign bylaw that regulates when signs can be produced, and there also is in the Municipal Elections Act the right for a candidate to enter into tenant relationships like apartment buildings under certain conditions and certain hours. So there are rights within those acts. Oftentimes we have produced letters to landlords or on behalf of candidates to certain areas that just identify where that section of the act is. And we could certainly guide in those processes in 2022 as well.
Okay, so is there an opportunity for our communications department to make it clear to tenants that they can put a sign on property, they can demonstrate by signage and the candidate of their choice, even if it is against the landlord's wishes, unless the requirement is no signs allowed on the property, then that's a different story. But I just have a concern that people's voting rights are not being protected. Is there a way to educate the population on that?
Through the mayor to the councillor, certainly we can take a look at that. We'd have to be careful in that we're not actually producing campaign communications, but I see what you're referencing is more about a tenant's rights, and we could look at what communications could be either tailored or increased to that effect as part of our communication plan.
Well, tenants' rights and landlords' rights as far as that goes. So that, we see this a lot of times, and there's no ability for us to restrict signs from commercial establishment either, is there? Some cities have done that. Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Councilor Carpenter. So not seeing any other questions or comments, Madam Clerk, put this to the vote, please. Item 12.3.1.
I'm not getting an option, Madam Clerk, but I'm in the affirmative.
Oh, my apologies, Councillor Sless. I still had you out from your conflict. My apologies.
Okay.
Item 12.3.1, the 2022 Municipal Election Planning Legislation Update Compliance Audit Committee Plan and Corporate Use of Resources in an Election Policy Update has carried on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those voting in favor, Councillors Sicoli, Utley, Sless, McCurry, Martin, Carpenter, and Toski, Van Til, Brook-Wall, Mayor Davis.
All right, we'll now move to item 12.3.5. That's the enactment in respect to fortification and protective elements applied to land. And Councillor Antosky, because of the conflict I have, Councillor Wall has the same conflict. Will you graciously assume chair of the meeting?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, no
Thank you.
problem. All right, so on this item, is there any discussion? And Madam Clerk, I'll rely on you for any hands in the gallery, please, or in the chambers.
Through to Councillor Antosky, just giving a moment for a pause, and I'm not seeing any hands being raised in person.
Thank you, and I see none virtually either. We will call the vote.
Item 12.3.5, the enactment of a bylaw to regulate in respect of fortification of and protective elements applied to land has carried on a recorded vote of 8-0. Those voting in favor, Councillors Sicoli, Utley, Sless, McCurry, Martin, Carpenter, and Toski, Van Tilborg, noting conflicts for both Mayor Davis and Councillor Wall.
And thank you. And back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Antosky, the mayor is not in the room, so it looks like you're up for the next item, which would be yours, 12.4.2.
My separation, yes. So what do we do in that case? I can't be in the chair for my separation, can I?
Well, yeah, Councillor Wall could chair from here, or Councillor Martin if we went back to the previous month's chair.
I'll happily chair. Councillor Antosky, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Councillor Wall. Yes, I would like to, I've separated this. I'd like to refer this. I've got some wording here. It says that item 12.4.2 clauses A and B be referred to Appointments Committee for reselection of the candidates. I have concerns that we're offside of our own policy here. So I would like this referred back to the Appointments Committee, please, and seeking a seconder.
Seconded by Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you.
So there's no speaking to a referral, is that right? Only time and place?
Referrals time and place.
Councillor McCurry, time and place?
It's a referral. Deferral is time and place. Referral is debatable.
Seeking guidance from the clerk.
It's a test of memory. You just tested me on my election. I just want to pull, just one moment. Let me just double check the procedural bylaw language.
This is not taking your time, Councillor McCurry, don't worry.
So the language in the procedural bylaw refers to that if the motion to refer is duly moved and seconded, the chair may ask the mover and seconder to hold the motion until such time the members have had an opportunity to speak in respect to the question. If the mover and seconder agree to hold the motion, the chair will then entertain the motion after all members have had an opportunity to speak. The question,
Seeking leave of the mover and seconder, Councillor Antosky, Councillor
if they
Carpenter.
do not agree, is where the motion is referred to only time and place.
I am always happy for there to be discussion.
Councillor Carpenter.
Not be it for me to limit discussion. That's not my role.
Councillor McCurry, the floor and the full 5 minutes are yours.
Acting Mayor, thank you very much. I've been on this council since 2003, and I've never seen the like of this. This is an affront to those folks whose name appear in this report tonight, who have already read this report. There's no reason given. And quite frankly, I find it very disturbing that this has reached the floor. If there's a motion to reconsider, that would be the courageous thing to do if some members of council aren't happy with who have been selected by the democratic process. I might remind those who often talk about
Point
it.
of order.
I'll get this thing to work one day. Go ahead, Councillor Antosky.
Thank you, Chair. I did provide a reason and, comments about courageous way to move it or whatever. I am also sorry that this had to come at this point, but I am concerned about us being offside of our own policy that we voted for. Thank you.
I still have the floor, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I see nothing in this that has merit. And I would respectfully ask every other member of council, save the mover and seconder who seem determined on this matter, to simply vote this down. And then we can move forward with this and issue an apology to those folks who are named in this report and hope that they will still deem that their service to be of value to this community.
Councillor Carpenter, floor is yours.
Thank you. I'll support the recommendation. I think that we were offside on our policy about appointing someone that was very qualified. But just speaking to this, the process needs to be looked at better. But my guess is this will fail on a vote of 7-3.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was part of that meeting through the entire meeting, and I didn't see anything improper that was done there. Everything that was done was within our policies and procedures, and I will be voting against this, as Councillor McCurry has requested all members of council to do, because what we did was appropriate. What we did was democratic. It was the right thing to do. And to question this report here, I think, as Councilor McCurry said, is insulting to the people that we've selected. So I certainly won't be supporting the resolution on the floor.
Councillor Antosky, I believe we get 2 speaking opportunities for this because it's an amendment. It's 1 speaking opportunity, unfortunately, Councillor Antosky, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Van Tilburg.
We've made our choices. And we have to accept those choices. The votes were held. Perhaps you can discuss the violation of a policy procedure, or that may come at a later time. But I believe these were the people that were selected. There was healthy debate on it. And I'm willing to go exactly with who was voted for to take those positions. This actually has nothing to do with anybody that was selected for their names or whatever. This has to do with the policy. And so if we've done wrong, I'm sure we'll find out later on. But from what I'm aware of, this is where these are our candidates. These are the people who were voted for and selected. So I won't be supporting what Councillor Antosky put forward.
Okay, seeing no further speakers, I call the vote on the amendment.
Made my whole system freeze. Just give me 1 second. My apologies, my system decided it needed a break for a moment. Let's try that again. On the amendment. Perfect.
Are we re-voting?
My apologies. Yes, my system did have a bit of a hiccup, so I re-put the vote forward for the amendment.
Okay.
My apologies. The amendment has failed on a recorded vote of 2-8. Those voting in favor, Councillors Carpenter and Toski. Those against, Councillors Sikoli, Utley, Sless, McCurry, Martin, Van Tilburg, Wall, Mayor Davis.
Mayor Davis, the floor is yours with Councillor McCurry in the queue to speak.
All right, I'll take the floor over. So that referral was defeated. So we have the appointments report on the floor, 12.4.2. Any discussion? Councillor Van Tilburg. Sorry, Councillor McCurry. He's in council chambers and his hand went up first. Councillor McCurry.
Mayor, thank you very much. I will make the request of this council that the vote to appoint these folks be unanimous. I won't begin to understand the mover and seconder. As I said earlier, I've never seen the like of this before. And I don't think that the policy and procedures that we employ had any fault in this process. The fact that some councillors may have been on the losing side of a vote during the in-camera appointments committee.
Point of order, Mayor.
Should not find its way.
Sorry, we have a point of order. Councillor McCurry, Councillor Antosky, point of order.
The decision was not because I was on a losing side. I'm not stomping my feet. I believe that we were offside of policy.
That clarity is much appreciated, lest the public should think that somebody would behave that way on this council. And I think the better way, the better angels in us should be voting unanimously now to demonstrate our support for these folks who put in tireless hours on behalf of this community, folks who've gone to the trouble to apply. In some cases, they've served on committees before. They'll be going through a rigorous training session. They'll be putting in countless hours of service. And I think that unanimous vote to appoint these folks would perhaps put this unfortunateness of the last 10 minutes behind us and allow us to all feel good about what's being done here tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Right. Going to the Zoom, Councilor Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be supporting the candidates that put their names forward. There's a limited number of positions here, but a lot of candidates put their names forward. And I appreciate the candidates that are volunteering, and hopefully they will seek election in the next election. This is a good stepping stone for them. No motives to be attached to anything, and nor should they be to any member of council. So I'll be supporting those that we selected. Thank you.
All right, so not seeing any further hands raised. Oh, cool. Councilor Wall.
I can raise my hand if you'd like.
No, I see it electronically. Go ahead.
Excellent. Tanya, hi. So I just want to share some commentary and then I want to ask you a couple of questions. My commentary is a huge thank you to every single person who put their name forward to volunteer on any of our committees. It's incredible. To volunteer to serve your city, that's a huge responsibility and it's just awesome. And you're all awesome people. But when you serve this community in any form, whether you're a volunteer or a paid employee or an elected representative like us, you've got to abide by certain decorum and you have to follow rules, including our code of conduct. And when you get put onto one of these boards, you kind of become maybe more than just kind of a representative of the city of Brantford. So Tanya, if you could you explain what kind of training or what kind of responsibilities committee members have, specifically when it comes to decisions of committees? So for example, if one of those committees makes a decision and people on that committee don't agree with that decision, kind of apt, I suppose.
Through the mayor to Councillor Wall. So I would start by saying from the training perspective, there's a robust training that comes from our HR department, which includes the employee code of conduct and respectful workplace, WSIB, those types of training that come from that area. Secondly, there is supports that are given for committee members in relation to procedure, as in their committee and parliamentary procedure that are provided. And the second part to your question was
what to do in the event that you don't agree with a decision of a committee you may be a representative of.
Right. Thank you for the reminder on that. It's a very good question. So what that comes down to is really democracy. So we have a quorum that is required, and when a majority puts the item forward, that is the decision of the committee. You may be in disagreement with a certain decision, but if a majority of the body decides that that item is to go forward, then that is how democracy works.
So the last thing I'd like to touch on, Mr. Mayor, if you'll allow me, is treatment of staff on these committees. So many of these citizen committees have staff members who act as liaison and representatives of them. And I've spoken about this in this chambers before, but sometimes it's deplorable the way that our staff members are treated by members of the public. And it's tough because staff members are in a difficult position. But what kind of, more so along the training and rules, staff obviously have to conduct themselves professionally when they're dealing with the members of the committee. But how do members of those committees go about ensuring that they're being respectful of staff?
Do it.
Let me ask the question specifically. If you were on the committee and one of the committee members was being disrespectful of a staff member, how do you call that kind of behavior out?
Councilor, we have a respectful workplace environment policy that we have here. So the staff do have process of calling that out, and there's a form they can fill out and reply to their supervisor. At that point in time, the supervisor will make that aware to the committee, and that you could file the complaint with your HR department, which council would see.
What about committee members? I appreciate the clarification on that. But I mean, in this room, we call point of order and we call all of that stuff. I mean, how I guess it's Robert's Rules of Order, a lot of stuff like that, but is that covered under the training for these committee members?
Sure. Short answer is yes.
Awesome. I'll end my speaking opportunity by saying it is an incredible honor to be appointed to a citizen committee. It's an incredible honor to serve your city in this capacity. But if you're going to be on one of these committees, I think it's just appropriate that you try to conduct yourself as professionally as possible and to be a good representative of the city of which you chose to serve. And that's it. Thank you.
Seeing no further requests for discussion, Madam Clerk, please take the vote on this matter.
Item 12.4.2, appointment of citizen members to various committees, boards, advisory committees, and task forces has carried on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those voting in favor, Councillor Secoli, Utley, Slush, McCurry, Martin, Carpenter, and Toski, Vento, Burkwell, Mayor Davis.
All right, we'll move to item 13, which is the section for urgent reports. I believe Councillor Antosky, you have the motion to move item 13.1. Please confirm that, read the resolution, state your seconder.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Carpenter. CAO COVID-19 emergency update. That report 2022-151 titled CAO COVID-19 emergency update be received, and B, that the staff be directed to administer a capacity limit of council chambers that reflects the provincial regulations or fire code regulations, whichever is the presiding legislation impacting the attendance regulations of the space.
Thank you. And I know we have an amendment that Councillor Martin wants from the floor, but before we do that, anybody want to speak to it before we take the amendment? Seeing no, Councillor McCurry.
Mayor, thank you very much. I wonder if staff might indicate, as it stands now, the changes with respect to the operation of the corporation of the city of Brantford that will become effective March 1st. In general.
Through Mr. Mayor, through you, there's a number of changes that occurred on February 17th, which our EOC has gone through. On March 1st, at this point in time, we're still waiting for regulations and more clarity of March 1st. But as far as we're aware, is the point of POV or vaccine, the proof of vaccination will be an option at that point in time. But and also capacity limits. But again, that hasn't been announced yet. Capacity limits could be lifted as well, higher than the February 17th ones that just announced.
Could you also indicate if there are changes with respect to the city's bus service schedule that come into effect March the 1st?
Yes, if I can, through Mr. Chair, our bus service will go back to half-hour services on February 28th. This was approved about a month ago, but we've had staffing issues, and a number of staffing issues. We'll be back up to full staff. We anticipate that by February 28th, and they'll be going back to full 1/2 hour service as it was previously during the week, and back to weekend service as they were previously.
Super. Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
All right, Councillor Martin, if you'd move forward, put your amendment on the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move, seconded by Councillor McCurry, that item 13.1 be amended to add the following as clause C, that proof of vaccination not be required for indoor city facilities effective upon the province removing this requirement. And just speaking to this, with the province removing the requirement, they're giving businesses the option of requiring proof of vaccination or not. So as a business, I think we need to make clear what our stance is. I believe that this will reduce confusion within the community. And in talking with staff, I found that this was their plan anyway, because it eliminates some of the conflict in asking for proof of vaccination and the need to have staff do that job. So I hope that council can support this just to provide clarity to the community, and that'll allow us to move this forward. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, as a seconder, I consider that friendly. Have the mover.
Sorry, Councillor Carpenter, you're saying as a seconder?
As a seconder, I consider that friendly if the mover does.
To the main motion.
Yep, main motion. And Councillor Antosky?
Yes. Yep.
All right, so it's friendly. So discussion then, did you want to finish, Councillor Martin? Or have you said your piece?
No, it's, I
Okay.
spoke to it and be quite
All right.
happy to have it accepted as friendly. Saves us voting on it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Councillor Utley, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to support the amendment. We look at the number of people that go into food stores, grocery stores, box stores. They're not required to show a proof of vaccination. And, I agree that, some of those stores, people come into fairly close proximity to each other. Restaurants, bars, a little bit different. Maybe a little more people that use the premises. But I think we're hopefully in a reasonable at a reasonable time with vaccinations that it's a little safer to get back to some of the things that we take for granted that we've done in previous years, and let's keep our fingers crossed that that'll work. Thank you, and I did want to thank the mover for the amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Van Tilburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I think that the friendly amendment there speaks volumes. If I could ask our CAO, is it the intent to, when the province has the restrictions, because we must follow whatever the province says, is it the intent to have all of our policies in line on the day that the province makes the announcement, so that we are in sync? In other words, it makes it, to keep it simple, pretty much along the lines of what Councillor Martin and McCurry brought forward, that, change comes, we're going to match it, so that there is no confusion out there amongst the public. Is that the intent?
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, that is the intent, Councillor.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you. To our CAO. So that doesn't prevent virtual meetings. We haven't lost the ability to be virtual. Staff can still be virtual. We can still do virtual meetings. The public can still come in virtually. Is that still in place? Is that not correct?
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, that will still be in place, the option of doing virtual and hybrid. We are looking at internal staff policy we've had for not meeting in person and trying to choose. We're meeting with a medical officer, help the local one for the Brantford area. Tomorrow we'll have a discussion about this, but the answer is yes, they'll keep the hybrid option, the in-person option, as well as the virtual option open, the three of them.
And the hybrid option is actually an option that the province put into the municipal act. Is that not correct?
Your first question was about just general meetings. I didn't realize you were referring to the council meetings. So if I refer to that, yes, that was changed in the municipal act last year or 2 years ago, almost now. Geez, yeah. Yes.
Okay, thank you. And speaking of that, one thing we've learned from the pandemic is the virtual meetings and virtual access makes us actually more accessible to the public, not less accessible. In fact, those those that maybe had to put the kids to bed after dinner or later, and they could still come in and chime in here after dinner, make their speech, and not have to leave the house, and then still take care of their children the next day or that evening. But if they want to attend meetings that are in the day, that virtually that's available. So all those virtual meetings have done is made us far more accessible, not less accessible. So I'm glad that we're keeping that, and I'm glad that the province has recognized that. If anything we should learn from the pandemic is that we have to be more accessible, and this is one of those ways that does that. Thank you.
Councillor Schlatz.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of questions, I guess, for you to Brian. Brian, we're eliminating the proof of vaccination going into the council chambers, but would that hold true for all city facilities?
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, it would. In fact, that's probably the biggest focus is our facilities. Councillor Martin's earlier comments, it's caused quite a bit of stress amongst citizens coming in out of a lot of facilities like the arenas and things like that. So as well as we've had to add additional security. So yes, they would be, in addition to council, would be all our facilities, yes.
Okay, and with the information we have now, that would be effective on the 1st of March?
That is true, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's what we're anticipating. Again, there's been that's what the last announcement was about 10 days ago, but that's what the estimated date was, and that's what we're planning towards.
Okay, and then finally, Mr. Mayor, if I could, the information sessions we have with ward meetings, with development review and that type of thing, when there's a project proposed and we have a neighborhood meeting. Will they then be in person as well, or at least the option of being in person?
Through Mr. Mayor, that's a great question. Our senior leadership team met this morning and we discussed this very issue. Again, we're meeting tomorrow with the Joint Emergency Operations Center with the medical officer help for this area. We want to have the discussion that we're going to meet again Thursday morning and make a decision on that. But that's the direction we're heading in towards offering hybrid as well as in-person meetings and obviously social distancing and doing all the necessary precautions and masking if people require masks at that time. So the answer is yes, we're heading in that direction, Councillor Sless.
Okay, and again, that would be March 1st. The reason I'm asking, Brian, we have a number of contentious development proposals coming forward in our ward. When we have it done virtually, we get 3 or 4 people, maybe 2 people actually join the meeting. After the meeting, we get 20 phone calls from people that didn't want to or didn't have the means to, didn't have the technical skills to. They just did not attend, but they certainly have an opinion, and they're the folks that are there when they're in person. So we're getting a very distorted view of what the neighborhood thinks by not having them in person. And I guess I'm not sure when you say it could be a hybrid meeting, I'm not sure how that would happen. In our case, the in-person meetings would take place normally at Costain Community Center. So would we have a screen set up there for people that wanted to dial in, or how would that even work, or what would it look like?
Again, there was a few, against you, Mr. Mayor, there's a few questions there. March 1st is the target date. That's the province still hasn't announced the regulations. That was the target date they set out for us. So we are working towards that date for the proof of vaccination. And the Councillor Martin's friendly amendment, it's as per the provincial regulations. We're working towards that. We're meeting with the local medical officer help to do that. Now, to your last question, but how would that work at TB Costain? Again, within the city council, many people have been in meeting rooms here. We do have boards, electronic boards, TVs on the wall that can bring staff and members of the public in, as well as people in the room. We don't have those luxuries yet at our recreation centers. So we'll have to look at that, how we do those community meetings. We haven't gone down that level yet, but that would be the plan if we could try to do both. But we'll see if we can in the community meetings or not. I'll be honest, we haven't got to that level of detail at this point in time, but we're working on that. That's the next. Oh, I do have one of my staff who may want to make it. Mr. Hans, if I can, through Mr. Mayor. Yes.
Councillor Sless, so what we can do is in the virtual right now, that we've been posting the videos on YouTube and asking for residents to comment for a 2-week period. So we could have the in-person PIC, but also have the consultant post a video on YouTube for residents to comment on that for a 2-week period as well. So we're looking at that through staffing, because we understand that this engagement, what we've learned from the pandemic, is actually great because it does reach a broader audience.
Appreciate that, and good luck. I know it's a real entanglement to try and sort out and get everybody their opportunity to be involved, and I appreciate you taking the time to try and do that. So thank you very much.
All right. Councillor Sikoli, you're next.
Thank you. I just want to very publicly thank Councillors Martin and McCreary for bringing us forward. I am very proud to support this and showing the residents of Brantford that we are open for business and for the enjoyment of all residents, regardless of vaccination status. I do have a question regarding the day when the provincial government decides that we can safely remove our mask mandate. From a governance perspective, clarity for myself, as much as for the people watching today. It is my understanding that the city of Brantford passed a bylaw change regarding the mask, and then the province brought forward the mask mandate. So when the day comes where the province removes that mask mandate, will we then have to pass a bylaw to change it on our end, or will it just automatically move forward?
To you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
To the Councillor Sikoli, we repealed our bylaw. So we did it before the province can go there, and we repealed our bylaw. So it's no longer standing. So the provincial one, when they make that decision, will be under provincial guidance.
Thank you for the clarity. Thank you.
Councillor McCurry.
Mayor, thank you. Thank you very much. Through you to staff. It was mentioned earlier that I believe that our virtual world has allowed more people to participate in the municipal process. I wonder if you could give us a glimpse as to how many people are watching on YouTube tonight.
What's the number?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the number is 20.
Most excellent. We had 3 in the crowd tonight, 2 delegations and a frequent friend here. And hopefully in days to come, we'll see more folks in this gallery. Again, Mayor, through you to staff, could you advise what the capacity limit is for this room currently?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe it's 68. We talked about the other day at EOC, Tanya, just confirming that, 68.
So through the chair to the councillor, with the 6-foot separations in play, that is 68 roughly in this room that could be permitted. 50% takes us down to about 52, and then the full capacity of about 105.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And at the council table, we have these swell plastic partitions, which create echoes, and quite frankly, they give me a little claustrophobia. But that alleviates the 6-foot separation for members of council. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
Okay, so there is room at the table for everybody here to operate within provincial guidelines, to operate within municipal guidelines. And I know for a fact that there's 1 or 2 members of council who do have compromised immune systems, and I know for a fact that they're at home because they just can't put themselves at risk, even in these times of lessened danger. But I just want to make it clear to folks watching that we can host council members who wish to be in the room. Now, you know, I'm going to say this about this return to normalcy. I share this with a lot of people, and I have never seen such divisiveness, such animosity, and such antagonism in this city, in this province, in this country, as we've seen in the last year or so. And I hope and pray that March 1st, when we begin to open our facility to the public, just like Costco, just like Walmart, that we're on the path to normalcy again, and that we can begin to put behind some of these fights and antagonisms that have divided us as a community and divided us as a country. And let's hope we're on the road to recovery, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to staff for enabling this. And I would like to issue a big welcome to everybody to come on down here on a Tuesday night and see what happens in person. Thank you.
All right, any other speakers? Seeing none. Madam Clerk.
Councillor Wall. I'll mark you in the affirmative. Item 13.1 CIO COVID-19 emergency update for 02/22/22 has carried on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those voting in favor, Councillors Sepoli, Utley, Sluss-McCurry, Martin, Carpenter, and Toski, Vento, Borg-Wall, Mayor Davis, and it is inclusive of the friendly amendment for Clause C.
All right, we'll move on to item 13.2, Streamlining Development Approval Fund. I believe Councillor Wall, you are the mover. If you please read your resolution and state the seconder if you've identified one.
Excellent. Agenda item 13.2, Streamlining Development Approval Fund 2022-155. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McCreary. A, that report 2022-155 entitled Streamlining Development Approval Fund be received. And B, that clerk be directed to place the Ontario Transfer Payment Agreement for receipt of funds to streamline the development approval process for the City of Brantford on a council signing bylaw for execution by the mayor and clerk. Thank you.
Okay. Speakers, Councillor Utley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to thank the Ontario government for providing these funds that will really help our staff, help the business community. And I want to emphasize the great amount that's been work to streamline the development approval process. It's really moving towards a good outcome for everybody. And I think this will be money that's very well spent, and it'll come back to us in spades. Thank you.
Councillor Scully.
Yes, I came across a quote today that I thought was very applicable, and it says, "A strong society is built by people who plant trees, the shade of which they know they will never sit under." And I thought it was very appropriate to this. I'm very happy to see our provincial government acknowledge and address the affordable housing crisis. And this is a small step, but it is a step towards more supply to meet the demand for our children and our grandchildren. I do have a question of staff. In Appendix A of this, it says that projects that are already in our annual or capital budget do not qualify for this funding. And I'm just curious if someone can address how that will impact our ability to use the funds, or if it will at all. Refresh my memory. I think I saw it in there. Thank you.
Through the chair, Heidi DeBreeze, General Manager, People, Legislative Services and Planning. So this report sets out a number of the eligible expenditures that we are considering utilizing these funds for. Among those are the e-permitting and online portal that we updated council on through a previous report, which is called the Cloud Permit System. We're in the process of procuring that system, as well as the zoning bylaw update that's currently underway. And while that was a pre-approved capital expenditure, we believe the funds expended in the year identified in this report may be eligible as well as additional online application guides and consulting services that are part of the development application process review implementation plan that is yet to be approved by council. So staff are in the process of reviewing the items that are set out in terms of the eligibility criteria identified in this report and as part of the agreement, and determining where we could save money that was previously approved and where we could also spend money that has not yet been approved on items that we know we need pursuant to the work of performance concepts.
I knew you guys would be on it. Thank you so much.
All right, not seeing any other speakers. Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Yes.
Item 13.2, streamlining development approval fund is carried on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those voting in favor, Councillor Secoli, Utley, Sluss, McCurry, Martin, Carpenter, and Tuskegee, Van Tilburg, while Mayor Davis.
All right, we have no resolutions on tonight's agenda, but we do have several notices of motions. And since one of them is mine, Councillor Tuskegee, please take the chair for this section.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are 3 notices of motion on tonight's agenda. Councillor McCurry, would you please read the title of your motion?
I'm quite happy to do that, Madam Chair. It is Ashgrove Avenue stop sign and safety measures.
Thank you. Councillor Wall, please read the title of your motion.
Salvage yard expanded licensing.
Thank you. And Mayor Davis, would you please read the title of your motion?
Joint and several liability.
Thank you. And back to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tuskegee. We'll now move to the final portion of our meeting, which are the bylaws. And just want to provide a member that some staff are participating in this meeting virtually and not in sight. Therefore, if there is an amendment to a bylaw that does require the clerical assistance or administrative assistance of a staff person not present, passage of that bylaw may be deferred. So with that, Councillor Martin, you've got the motion for first and second reading of the bylaws. I'll settle myself in if you would please read your resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move, seconded by Councillor McCurry, that bylaw 17-2021, bylaw to authorize the execution of agreements individually dated and listed on Schedule A attached here to 1 letter of agreement between City of Brantford and Her Majesty Queen in right of the Province of Ontario as represented by the Ministry of Transportation for the Province of Ontario regarding the 2021-2022 dedicated gas tax funds for public transportation program. And 2, Ontario Transfer Payment Agreement regarding receipt of funds from the Streamlined Development Approval Fund. 18-2022, bylaw to amend bylaw number 58, 2019, as previously amended, being a bylaw to authorize the Police Service Headquarters redevelopment project and to make provision for the financing. 1922, bylaw to amend bylaw 3783, being a bylaw to regulate traffic in the city of Brantford, Balmoral Drive at Oxford Street. 2022, bylaw to amend bylaw 14488, being a bylaw to regulate parking in the city of Brantford, Sifton Properties, Dunstan Street, Schedule 27, fire routes on private property. 2122, bylaw to amend bylaw 14488, being a bylaw to regulate parking in the city of Brantford, Park Road North, Schedule 7, parking prohibited any time. 2222, bylaw to amend bylaw 3783, being a bylaw to regulate traffic in the city of Brantford, Park Road North, Schedule 5, lane designation, Schedule 16, pedestrian crossovers. 2322, bylaw to amend bylaw 3783, being a bylaw to regulate traffic in the city of Brantford, Powerline Road, Schedule 8, speed regulations. 2422, being a bylaw to amend 14488, being a bylaw to regulate parking in the city of Brantford, time limit exemption permit parking, qualifying residential premise means a dwelling unit with 1, 2, 3, or 4 family dwellings. 2522, bylaw to amend bylaw 14488, being a bylaw to regulate parking in the city of Brantford on Myrtleville Drive. 2622, bylaw to amend bylaw 14488, being a bylaw to regulate parking in the city of Brantford on Barker Street. 2722, bylaw to amend bylaw 70/2010, being a bylaw to adopt various city of Brantford policies by repealing and replacing city policy 004, use of corporate resources for election purposes. 2822, bylaw to amend chapter 326, business licensing of the city of Brantford Municipal Code to add schedule A15, short-term rental accommodation. 2922, bylaw to amend chapter 478, signs outdoor, other advertising devices, additional information. 3022, a bylaw to regulate in respect of the fortification and of protective elements applied to land. 3121, sorry, this should be 22, there's a typo on this. Bylaw to amend bylaw 15218, being a bylaw to appoint members of council to various committees, boards, and task force for the 2018 to 2022 term of council. 3222, bylaw to amend chapter 478, signs, outdoor, other advertising devices, City of Brantford Municipal Code. 3322, bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Brantford with respect to the meetings held on February 22nd, 2022.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. So we are going to separate bylaw 30/2022 because of the conflict that I previously declared in Councillor Wall. Does anybody want any other bylaws separated for discussion purposes? Councillor Van Tilburg.
26/2021. 26/2021.
Yep. All right. Any other bylaws separated for discussion purposes? Seeing none. So, Madam Clerk, if you would take the vote, please, on the bylaws, first and second reading that have not been separated.
All bylaws on first and second reading not separated for discussion purposes have carried on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those voting in favor, Councillors Sokoli, Utley, Schlesbrook, Martin, Carpenter, Antosky, Van Tilburg, Wall, Mayor Davis.
All right, we'll go to bylaw 26/2021. Councillor Van Tilburg, you asked for this to be separated.
Yes, just to be separated. Thank you.
All right. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the vote on that. 26/2021.
Certainly just, it is a typo for 2020. It should be 2022, but I will correct that. The first and second reading for bylaw 26-2022 is carried on a recorded vote of 8-2. Those voting in favor, Councillors Secoli, Utley, McCrory, Martin, and Toski, Wall, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillors Carpenter and Van Tilburg.
Councillor Antonsky, do you mind taking the vote for second reading on 30-2022?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you, Mayor. Is there any discussion on bylaw 30? Madam Clerk, any hands in the chambers?
Through to Chair Antosky, there are no hands.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll go to the vote.
The first and second reading of bylaw 30-2022 has carried on a recorded vote of 7-1. Those voting in favor, Councillors Secoli, Utley, McCrory, Martin, and Toski, Van Tilburg. Those opposed, Councillor Carpenter, noting conflicts for both Mayor Davis and Councillor Wall.
Thank you, and we'll put it back to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Antonsky. We'll move to third reading. Councillor Sless, I believe you've got the resolution for third reading. If you'd please read that and state your seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do. It's moved by myself, seconded by my ward mate, Councillor Utley, that bylaw 17-2022 through to and including bylaw 33-2022 be taken as read a third time and be finally passed and numbered, and signed by the mayor and clerk.
So following what we did in first and second reading, we'll have a separate 30-2022, and I assume Councillor Van Tilburg, you want that to continue in 26-2022. All right, does anybody else want anything separated? Third reading. Seeing no raised hands. Madam Clerk, if you would please take the vote on the third reading of all the bylaws that have not been separated.
Sorry, my e-scribe has decided that it needed a pause again for a moment. Just bear with me. The third reading of all bylaws not separated for discussion purposes have carried on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those voting in favor, Councillor Secoli, Utley, McCrory, Martin, Carpenter, and Toski, Van Tilburg, Wall, Mayor Davis.
All right, we'll move to bylaw 26-2022. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the vote on 26-2022.
Councillor Martin, thank you. I'll mark you in the affirmative. And Councillor Wall. Affirmative, thank you. I'll mark you as well. The third reading of bylaw 26-2022 is carried on a recorded vote of 8-2. Those voting in favor, Councillors Secoli, Utley, McCrory, Martin, and Toski, Wall, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillors Carpenter and Van Tilburg.
So Councillor Toski, would you mind, please, 30-2022 for third reading?
Thank you, Mayor. Any discussion on bylaw 30-2022? Madam Clerk, anyone in chambers?
Chair Antosky, no, there are no hands raised in chambers.
Thank you. And seeing none virtually, I'll go to the vote, please.
The third and final reading of bylaw 30-2022 is carried on a recorded vote of 7-1. Those voting in favor, Councillors Secoli, Utley, McCrory, Martin, and Toski, Van Tilburg. Those opposed, Councillor Carpenter, noting conflicts for Mayor Davis and Councillor Wall.
Thank you, Mayor. You may resume the chair, please.
Thank you, Councillor Toski. So while I'm signing the bylaws, we'll go to ward announcements, and we'll start with Councillor Secoli.
I don't have anything today.
Okay. Councillor Utley.
I'm in the same boat. For once.
Councillor McCrory.
Mayor, thank you. You know, I'm never a shortage of words when it comes to council meetings. First of all, it's the time of season when parts of our roadway begin to break up, and Mark Jacquelin's guys are out there diligently patrolling the city looking for potholes. I would suggest if members of the community find one, especially those big whoppers out there, let your counselor know, and your counselor can pass that information along to the works department. And you know, people talk about slow response, but with respect to some of the things we do, like potholes, we're generally there the same day. So keep passing that information on to us. And as I alluded to earlier, let's be kind out there. Let's be tolerant of folks that have different opinions from you. Let's not do stuff on Facebook to compile a number of likes. Be decent human beings, and let's get beyond this period of animosity that our country, our province, and our city seem to have suffered through this last year. And not too many days now until the first day of spring.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you. With the weather we've been having and the time of year it is, it's a time for flooding. So please be careful around any bodies of water. A lot of the banks along the river will be very slippery with the rain, and with the snow melt combined with the rain, the rivers and creeks will all be high. And also, if there's a catch basin in front of your house, please ensure that it's clear so that our streets will drain properly. Thank you.
Councillor Wall.
Thanks, Mayor Davis. I usually like to take this opportunity to give a shout out to the Neighborhood Association, so I'm going to do that. There are just so many amazing things that the Neighborhood Association is doing, but I want to bring note to some motions that are inevitably going to be coming to this council soon regarding traffic in Eagle Place. So there is a group of neighbors who are talking about implementing some serious changes on Erie Ave, which for anybody who's paying attention to that whole thing will know that while Erie Ave affects people who live in Eagle Place, it also affects 10 to 15,000 people a day who are using that as a main artery to get in and out of the city. And if you want to have your voice heard about that, I highly recommend you reach out to the Eagle Place Community Association and become a part of that conversation, because they are some pretty sophisticated and comprehensive changes. We're also in the midst of putting the final touches on a neighborhood safety campaign with the Downtown Central Neighborhood Association, the Eagle Place Community Association, and the Eastward Echo Place Neighborhood Association. It's like a community safety toolkit, and everybody cares about community safety. So please reach out to your neighborhood association or your councillors. I know Councillor Antosky and Carpenter and Councillor Van Tilburg and I all had meetings recently. And then I'd like to give a shout out to the Chief of Police, who took time out of his very incredibly busy schedule to be a part of that neighborhood association meeting. Both of them. They are live on YouTube if you want to go and watch them. I've had about 100 emails and conversations and texts and posts on Facebook about that meeting. So please, if you want to be a part of that conversation, reach out. And then finally, shovel your sidewalks. Pretty please, put down salt. Pretty please. Every single time it snowed, I've had so many emails from people who have mobility issues or are in scooters or walkers or may just have mobility issues temporarily. And if you don't shovel and put down salt, it's a danger for everybody, including people who don't have mobility issues. I mean, just shovel your driveway, shovel your sidewalk. And if you can't do it, please find someone to do so. It's our responsibility to keep the roadway safe for everybody. We'd really appreciate it if you shoveled your snow. Thank you. And everybody who does shovel your snow, you're amazing. Thanks.
Councillor Antosky.
I just want to highlight the new PXO is finally finished on Brentwood Park Road by Sympatica. I want to thank staff for an amazing job. We might be the only one in Canada that actually has the activated street lights on top that turn on at nighttime. I think we're the first, but it's got lots of flashing lights. There's lots of signs leading up to the crosswalk. There's signs over the laneways. So just a reminder, these are new crosswalks, and just a reminder to both pedestrians and to drivers. If you see those, what they call shark's teeth, so the triangles before the crosswalk, that says you have to stop there for any opposing kind of, whether it's traffic or pedestrians. In this case, it's pedestrians. So slow down. If you see somebody looking to cross, even if they haven't activated the lights, they still have the right of way. Hopefully they will activate the lights. And avoid a hefty ticket. It's if you've got somebody in the crosswalk crossing and you blow through that, I think it's $365 and 4 points. So we're going to see a lot more of these crosswalks coming to Brantford. They're very effective when people know how to use them. And to the pedestrians, make sure you're making eye contact. And it also always helps to point to let the driver know you are absolutely intending to cross. You know, that doesn't have to happen, drivers, but certainly anything we can do to make that communication better and keep everybody safer is very welcome. So thanks to staff for that. Thanks to police services for helping us with that. And thanks to all the residents that are learning to deal with these new crosswalks properly.
Yeah, great point, Councillor Antosky. Thanks again for telling the community about those crosswalks. Councillor Sluss, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, there's two meetings coming up and a third one being planned for Ward 2 regarding bike lanes. There's one coming up on February 24th, which is Thursday. It's a second meeting requested by the residents there for Ava Road. There's a second one been requested for the Balmoral Drive. That's been scheduled for March 7th. And we're in the middle of scheduling one for the proposed bike lanes on Tollgate Road. So for those folks that didn't attend the first one, please attend the next one. And for those that have an opinion that we haven't heard yet, please get the link, log in and let your voice be heard. These are not a done deal. And we're having these meetings to get your opinion and to get your thoughts and your concerns regarding these proposed bike lanes. So please make every effort you can to attend. You'll be getting a notice in the mail. I believe Ava Road should have received theirs, and I would think this week you will get one if you live on Balmoral. So please watch your mailbox and please log in the night that's indicated on your notice. Okay, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Let's see, who else do we have? Councillor Carpenter, I see you. Don't see Councillor Carpenter though. Councillor Carpenter, are you there for a ward announcement? Doesn't look like it. I want to make a mayor's announcement. And this is something that is extremely important to our community. And it may well be a way to bring us together after the divisiveness that's been caused by this pandemic. And on that point, I'd say this. We clearly are moving to, hopefully, the end of the pandemic. Relaxations, all the requirements and rules that have so divided us and caused so much controversy, they are coming to an end. But I'd ask people to remember that we do have people in our community who are immunocompromised, who have certain issues that will require them to continue to wear a mask and do things to protect themselves. And I think that's what we're moving into, where we each have to decide for ourselves and our families what steps do we need to take to protect ourselves. And I hope people will be respectful of those in the community that might want to continue to wear masks or maintain separation because they simply either have to or because they're just more comfortable. And I'm hoping we'll be moving into a period where we're accepting that we're not all the same and we all have different requirements, and not name call one another and call one another out because we all have a different level of risk. But the really good news is going to bring us all together is we know our community needs a new hospital. It's our time to have a new hospital. And there's a committee that's been working hard, both pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, led by the hospital, David McNeil, and also Paul Emerson, the hospital board chair. And Mayor Bailey and I are on that committee as well. And we've been planning over the last 2 years, most of the heavy lifting done by hospital staff. How do we get this hospital that it's our time to have in our community? And we have applied for stage 1 funding. It's not a lot of money that comes to us from the province in stage 1. It won't create a new hospital, but what it does is it allows the planning to proceed to a more detailed level, but more importantly, it has great symbolic significance. It'll put our hospital in the line, in the queue, recognized by the province that at some point we're getting a new hospital, and it can take 6 to 8 years. I hope to come out later this spring with a program that where the city will be able to build a reserve, because the local contribution to a new and upgraded hospital will be well greater than $100 million, because the province does not pay 100% of those costs. And I hope later this spring that we'll begin as a council to look at what we can do to prepare ourselves, our community for that day when the province says we get a new hospital, but that we have to raise the money to make that possible here. So next week, you're going to see a campaign coming out of the hospital, from the hospital, that will be asking everyone to join in and let the province know we want a new hospital, that it's our time to have a new hospital, because the politicos, the leaders in this community can talk about a new hospital, they can pitch the province, but what will get us across the finish line in stage one is everyone in our community that has an interest in a new hospital, upgrade hospital, writes the province, writes the premier to let them know it's our time. And that'll soon be coming out next week, a program, an advertising program, and a community participation program where everybody's gonna have to pitch in to tell the province, send the province that message. So stay tuned. You'll see it coming out, rolling out next week. With that, I'll call with those rousing words intended to bring us all together. This meeting's adjourned.